The tower before Babel, ziggurats and divine language. Humanity speaks one language. They gather in a plain and decide to build a tower that reaches to the heavens. They use baked brick and tar. They want to make a name for themselves, to become like gods. God comes down to see the tower. He scatters them across the earth and confuses their language so they can no longer understand each other. The tower is abandoned, unfinished. This is the Tower of Babel. But the tower already existed. It was called Etemenanki, and it stood in Babylon for over 1,000 years. Long before the Bible was written, the Mesopotamians built massive step pyramids called ziggurats. These weren't tombs, they were temples, stairways to heaven, places where earth met sky and humans could encounter the gods. The most famous was Etemenanki, meaning the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. It stood in Babylon and towered nearly 300 feet high, about the height of a 30-story building. Ancient records describe its construction. It was built from millions of baked mud bricks, held together with bitumen, sticky black tar from the ground. Workers came from across the empire, speaking dozens of languages, organized into teams by tongue and region. At the top stood a shrine to Marduk, the chief god of Babylon. The ziggurat wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an act of worship, a bridge between humanity and heaven. Now listen to Genesis chapter 11. The whole earth had one language and one speech. As people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. Shinar is the biblical name for Babylon. They said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick for stone and bitumen for mortar, brick and bitumen exactly how ziggurats were built. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower. He said, "If, as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So God scattered them across the earth. The city was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. The Tower of Babel is Etemenanki. The evidence is overwhelming. Both are in Babylon. Both use baked brick and bitumen. Both are described as reaching toward heaven. Both involve multiple languages and scattered peoples. Even the name connects. Babel comes from Bab-ilu in Akkadian, meaning gate of God. Etemenanki was literally called the gateway between heaven and earth. The Babylonians themselves recorded the construction. Workers came from across the empire. Akkadians, Sumerians, Elamites, Arameans, each speaking their own language. Coordinating this multilingual workforce was a logistical nightmare. Confusion of tongues wasn't divine judgment. It was the reality of building an empire. The Bible takes that reality and transforms it into theology. What was once a monument to divine connection becomes a warning about human arrogance. For the Babylonians, the ziggurat was sacred. It was a ladder to the gods, a place where heaven touched earth. The confusion of languages was simply the cost of empire. Diversity was strength, not curse. But for the exiled Israelites living in Babylon centuries later, Etemenanki meant something different. They saw it towering over the city, a symbol of Babylonian power, pride, and the empire that had destroyed Jerusalem and dragged them into captivity. So they rewrote the story. The tower that was meant to connect humanity to God became the tower that separated humanity from God. Unity of language wasn't a gift, it was dangerous. Ambition to reach heaven wasn't worship, it was rebellion. The same structure, a completely different story. Etemenanki stood until the 5th century BCE, when it began to decay. Alexander the Great ordered it demolished in 323 BCE, planning to rebuild it even grander. He died before construction began. The tower was never rebuilt. Today, nothing remains but a rectangular depression in the ground in Babylon, Iraq. But ancient records tell us exactly what it looked like. 7 massive tiers, each painted a different color, crowned with a blue glazed temple at the summit. The Israelites who wrote Genesis had seen it. They had walked past it daily during their exile. When they wrote about a tower that reached to heaven, they weren't inventing, they were remembering. The Tower of Babel wasn't built by rebellion. It was built by worship, and then it was remembered as rebellion, by a people who had seen it, lived under it, and needed to explain why empires fall and languages scatter. Same bricks, different story. Part of something older.